The garden shears slipped from Zara Whitmore's trembling fingers and clattered against the stone pathway, the sound impossibly loud in the midnight stillness as she realized she was no longer alone among the roses. She had thought herself safe in the walled garden behind the old library where she worked as an archivist. The gate was always locked after sunset, and the building itself had been empty when she left at 11. But Zara had forgotten her phone somewhere among the historical documents she had been cataloging, and when she returned through the side entrance she knew about, she had been drawn to the garden by the scent of night-blooming roses. Her grandmother had grown the same variety, and Zara could never resist their perfume. She had only meant to spend a moment among them, perhaps deadhead a few spent blooms the day staff had missed. Now she stood frozen, her hand still extended where it had been cradling a white rose, and slowly lifted her gaze to the figure standing motionless on the far side of the garden fountain. He was beautiful in a way that made her chest constrict with instinctive fear. Tall and powerfully built, dressed in dark clothing that seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. But it was his face that stopped her breath entirely, pale as porcelain, framed by hair so white it gleamed silver, with features so perfect they seemed carved rather than born. And his eyes, even from this distance, seemed to catch the light like a predator's. "I apologize for startling you," he said, and his voice was like smoke and honey, cultured and ancient, despite its smoothness. "It is rare to find anyone who appreciates these particular roses. Rarer still at this hour." Zara's mind raced. She should run. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But her feet remained rooted to the cobblestones, and her voice emerged steadier than she felt. "These are your roses?" Something flickered in his expression, amusement perhaps. "In a manner of speaking, I planted them myself many years ago. This garden predates the library by several centuries." "That's impossible," Zara said automatically, then felt foolish. Nothing about this man suggested anything was impossible. The library was built in 1823. "The historical records show what humans were allowed to know," he interrupted gently, taking a single step closer. "The movement was unnaturally fluid, like water flowing, but you are partially correct. The building you know as a library was indeed constructed in that year. However, it replaced something far older and the garden was retained. A condition of the sale, you might say." Zara's fingers found the garden wall behind her, rough stone grounding her. "Who are you?" "My name is Konstantin Draemir," he said, inclining his head slightly, "and I believe you already know what I am, though you are reluctant to acknowledge it." "Vampire." The word hung unspoken between them like frost in the air. Zara had read the legends, of course. Working in a historical library, especially one as old as this, meant encountering countless texts on folklore and mythology. She had cataloged dozens of volumes on vampires alone, from Stoker to obscure medieval manuscripts. But reading about something and standing 10 feet away from it were entirely different experiences. "You should be running," Konstantin observed, though he made no move to pursue her. "Why are you not running, Zara Whitmore?" Hearing her name in his mouth sent a chill down her spine. "How do you know my name?" "I make it my business to know who works in buildings I own," he replied. "You have been here for 6 months, arriving with excellent credentials from the university and a particular gift for medieval languages. You work late most evenings, often until 10 or 11, lost in documents that would bore most modern humans to tears. And you come to this garden, when you think no one is watching, to tend roses that remind you of someone you loved." Zara's throat tightened. "My grandmother, she died 2 years ago." "You have my condolences," Konstantin said, and impossibly he sounded sincere. "She taught you to garden, I assume?" "She taught me a lot of things." Zara forced herself to straighten, lifting her chin. If she was going to die tonight, she would do it with dignity. "Are you going to kill me?" The question seemed to surprise him. His pale eyebrows rose slightly, and for the first time, something like genuine emotion crossed his perfect features. "No. Why would I kill someone who has been caring for my roses with such devotion?" "Because that is what vampires do," Zara said, hearing the tremor creep into her voice despite her efforts. "In the stories," Konstantin repeated, his tone dry. "Yes, humans have always excelled at stories. Half-truths and wild exaggerations designed to explain what they cannot understand." He moved closer, and this time Zara did press herself against the wall. He stopped immediately, raising one pale hand in a gesture of peace. "I am not going to hurt you, Zara. You have my word, for whatever that is worth to you." "The word of a vampire," she whispered. "The word of a king," he corrected quietly. "There is a difference." "King." The word registered slowly, and Zara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "You're the Vampire King?" "Among other titles, yes. Though I have not used most of them in public for some time." Konstantin gestured to a stone bench near the fountain. "Will you sit? I would very much like to speak with you, and it seems unnecessarily dramatic to conduct this conversation while you flatten yourself against that wall." It was absurd, insane. Zara knew she should run, should scream, should do anything except what she found herself doing, which was carefully moving to the bench and lowering herself onto the cold stone. Konstantin remained standing, maintaining a careful distance between them, which she appreciated more than she could express. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why do you want to speak with me?" "Because in 300 years of owning this property, you are the first human who has ever touched those roses with genuine care," Konstantin said simply. "Most ignore the garden entirely. A few have tried to remove it, though I ensured those efforts failed. But you tend them as though they matter, asking nothing in return. That interests me." Zara looked at the roses climbing the far wall, their white blooms ghostly in the moonlight. "They are beautiful, and they were being neglected. I couldn't stand watching them wither when a little care would make all the difference. Even though they are not yours. Beauty does not need to be possessed to be preserved," Zara said. "My grandmother taught me that too." Konstantin was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those unsettling eyes. Finally he said, "She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was. Zara surprised herself by continuing. She grew roses in the poorest part of the city, in a neighborhood where most people could not afford to care about flowers. But she said that was exactly why they mattered. Because everyone deserves beauty, regardless of their circumstances. "A philosophy I suspect she lived by in more ways than simply gardening," Konstantin observed. Zara nodded, not trusting her voice. Her grandmother had been the kindest person she had ever known, taking in foster children, feeding homeless neighbors, always finding ways to help others despite having very little herself. Losing her had carved a hole in Zara's chest that had not healed, might never heal. "I am sorry," Konstantin said softly. "Grief is something even immortality does not erase. I know this from experience." Despite herself, despite everything, Zara found herself asking, "Who did you lose?" The expression that crossed his face was ancient and profoundly sad. "Many people over many years. But if you are asking who I grieve for still, it was my sister. She was killed 400 years ago in a conflict between vampire houses. I was not yet king then, and I could not protect her as I should have." The raw pain in his voice was unmistakable, and Zara felt her fear begin to crack around the edges. "I am sorry for your loss, as I am for yours," Konstantin replied. They sat in silence for a moment, two beings separated by mortality and death, united by grief. Then he added, "It is late. I should not keep you longer, but I would ask one thing, if you are willing." Zara tensed. "What?" "Continue caring for the roses as you have been," he said. "And if you are willing, I would like to speak with you again. Here in the garden, where we both find some measure of peace." It was madness. Everything about this situation defied reason and self-preservation. But Zara heard herself say, "All right." Konstantin's smile was small but genuine, transforming his severe features into something almost warm. "Thank you. I will ensure you are not disturbed when you work here at night. The garden will be safe for you always. You have my protection." "Why would you do that?" Zara asked, bewildered. "Because kindness is rare," Konstantin said simply, "and in my experience it should be protected when found." Before Zara could respond, he inclined his head in a gesture that spoke of old-world courtesy, then turned and walked toward the far wall of the garden. She blinked and he was simply gone, as though he had never been there at all. Zara sat on the stone bench for a long time after, staring at the white roses and wondering if she had lost her mind entirely. The next evening Zara stayed late at the library again, though she spent more time staring at the documents in front of her than actually reading them. Her mind kept drifting to the garden, to pale skin and silver hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through her. She had half convinced herself it had been a dream, some strange hallucination brought on by exhaustion and grief. But at midnight, when she made her way to the garden through the side entrance, she found fresh pruning shears placed carefully on the bench where she had sat, and a single white rose laid across them. He was waiting by the fountain again, exactly as before, though tonight he wore a long coat that made him look even more like something from another century. When Zara entered, he turned to face her, and she saw relief flicker across his features. "You came," he said. "You sound surprised." Zara replied, setting down her bag and picking up the shears. They were expensive, professional-grade tools that must have cost several $100s. "I told you I would." Humans often say things they do not mean, particularly when faced with creatures from their nightmares. Konstantin observed Zara move to a rosebush that needed attention, carefully examining the stems. "Are you from my nightmares?" "I could be," he said quietly. "I have certainly been the nightmare of many humans throughout history." She looked at him then, really looked at him. In the moonlight he seemed almost to glow, his pale skin luminous, his white hair moving slightly in the night breeze. He was beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman, and she should be terrified. But instead she found herself curious. "Tell me about it," she said. "The truth, not the stories." Konstantin tilted his head, considering her request. Then he moved to the bench and sat, folding his hands in his lap in a gesture that seemed oddly vulnerable for someone so powerful. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Zara said simply. What you are, how you live, what is true and what is legend, so he told her. As she worked among the roses, Konstantin spoke of the vampire world that existed alongside humanity, hidden in plain sight. He described the ancient houses, the courts that met in underground palaces, the strict laws that governed their kind. He explained that sunlight was indeed deadly, that they required blood to survive, but that modern vampires had arrangements with blood banks and willing donors. He spoke of their enhanced strength and speed, their longevity, the way time moved differently when you had centuries instead of decades. We are not the monsters your stories paint us as, he said at one point. But neither are we innocent. We are predators by nature, and that nature must be constantly managed, controlled. Some vampires do this better than others, and you, Zara asked, pruning a dead branch. How do you manage it? I am old, Konstantin said simply. I have had many centuries to learn control, and I have seen what happens when control is lost. It is not pretty, and it is not something I wish to repeat. Zara paused in her work, turning to face him. How old are you? I was born in 1502, he replied. In what is now Romania, though the borders and names have changed many times since then. I became a vampire in 1523, and I have been one ever since. 500 years, Zara tried to wrap her mind around that span of time and failed. What was it like becoming a vampire? Konstantin's expression darkened. Painful, terrifying. I was dying from a wound sustained in battle, and the vampire who found me offered me a choice. Death or transformation. I chose transformation, not understanding what I was truly choosing. It took many years for me to accept what I had become. Do you regret it? Zara asked softly. Sometimes, he admitted. When I lose someone I care about to time and age, when I see humans living full, complete lives in the space it takes me to barely change at all. But then I think of the things I have witnessed, the beauty and wonder that only time can reveal, and I find I cannot wholly regret the choice. Zara returned to her work, but her mind was spinning. Why are you telling me all of this? Because you asked, Konstantin said, and because you deserve honesty. You have stumbled into my world, Zara Whitmore, and I would rather you understand it than fear it based on false information. I think I still fear it, Zara admitted. You, what you represent, Konstantin said, surprising her. Fear is healthy. It keeps you cautious, safe. I would not want you to lose that entirely. They fell into silence after that, Zara working and Konstantin watching, until the early hours of morning when she finally set down the shears and declared the roses properly tended. Thank you, Konstantin said as she prepared to leave, for your care of them and for your company tonight. Will you be here tomorrow? Zara asked before she could stop herself. His smile was slow and warm. If you wish it. I do, she said and meant it. The nights blurred together after that, falling into a pattern that felt both strange and natural. Zara would work late at the library, then make her way to the garden where Konstantin would be waiting. They would talk for hours while she tended the roses, conversations that ranged from philosophy to history to art to the small mundane details of daily life. Konstantin was unlike anyone Zara had ever known. He was educated in a way that came from living through history rather than reading about it, and his perspective on events she had only studied in books was fascinating. He spoke of meeting artists whose works now hung in museums, of witnessing revolutions and plagues and transformations of society. But he also asked about her life with genuine interest, wanting to know about her work, her thoughts, her dreams. You could do more than archive documents, he said one night, watching her carefully catalog a particularly fragile medieval manuscript she had brought to show him. Your translations are exceptional. Universities would pay dearly for your expertise. Zara shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I like the quiet of archival work, and I like knowing I am preserving things that might otherwise be lost. Much like the roses, Konstantin observed. Much like the roses, she agreed. As the weeks passed, Zara found herself looking forward to midnight with an intensity that should have worried her. She spent her days distracted, counting hours until she could return to the garden, to the strange and beautiful creature who waited for her there. It was dangerous, this growing attachment. She knew that, but she could not seem to stop herself. Konstantin seemed equally affected, though he was more guarded about showing it. But Zara noticed the way his eyes followed her movements, the way he leaned slightly forward when she spoke, the protective edge that entered his voice whenever she mentioned anything that might have caused her difficulty or pain. One night, nearly a month after their first meeting, Zara arrived at the garden to find Konstantin pacing near the fountain, his usual composure fractured. What's wrong? She asked immediately, setting down her bag. He stopped, turning to face her. There is a situation, one that may affect you, and I find I cannot decide how much to tell you without alarming you unnecessarily. Zara's heart began to pound. Tell me everything. Konstantin ran a hand through his white hair, a gesture of frustration she had never seen from him before. There are other vampires in the city, members of a rival house who have taken interest in my territory. They are testing boundaries, seeing how far they can push before I respond. And that concerns me how? Zara asked, though she already suspected the answer. Because they know about you, Konstantin said bluntly. They have been watching the library, watching this garden. They know you come here, that you spend time with me, and they may seek to use that information against me. Fear spiked through Zara's chest, cold and sharp. Use me against you? How? Konstantin crossed the distance between them in a blur of movement, stopping just in front of her. This close, she could see the tension in every line of his body, the way his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. By hurting you, by taking you, by making me choose between your safety and my position as king. Then I should stop coming here, Zara said, though the words hurt to speak. If my presence puts you at risk, no. The word was sharp, absolute. Konstantin reached out as if to touch her face, then stopped himself, his hand hovering in the air between them. Forgive me, but no. I will not allow them to dictate who I speak with, who I spend time with, and I will not allow them to harm you. You cannot protect me every moment, Zara said quietly. I have to sleep, work, live my life. You said yourself that sunlight is deadly to vampires. What happens during the day? I have resources, Konstantin said. Human associates who owe me favors, security measures that can be implemented. I can keep you safe, Zara, if you will allow me to. She should say no, should walk away from this entire situation before it consumed her completely. But looking at Konstantin's face, at the desperate sincerity in his ancient eyes, Zara found she could not bear the thought of never seeing him again. What do you need me to do? She asked. The relief that washed over his features was palpable. Move into the library building. There are apartments on the upper floors, originally built for the head librarian but currently empty. They are within my territory, protected by wards and guards. You would be safe there day and night. Move in? Zara repeated, stunned. I have an apartment, a lease, a life, which means nothing if you are dead, Konstantin said harshly. Then more gently, please, I am asking you to trust me, just until this situation is resolved. Zara thought of her tiny apartment across town, the space she had rented after her grandmother's death because it was cheap, and she could not bear to be in the house full of memories. There was nothing there she truly cared about, nothing that could not be replaced or moved. All right, she said. I'll move in. The apartment was beautiful in a way that made Zara's breath catch. Hardwood floors, high ceilings with original molding, tall windows that overlooked the garden below. The furniture was antique but clearly well maintained, and the kitchen had been updated with modern appliances while retaining its historic charm. This is too much, Zara said, running her hand along a mahogany bookshelf that probably cost more than she made in a year. It is necessary, Konstantin replied, setting down the single box of belongings Zara had brought with her. He had insisted on helping her move, though his inability to go outside during daylight meant they had to wait until after sunset to transport her things. And it pleases me to know you will be comfortable here. Zara turned to face him, taking in the way he stood in the center of her new living room, looking both perfectly at ease and slightly awkward. Why does it matter to you so much? I'm just a human who tends your roses. You are not just anything, Konstantin said quietly. You are intelligent, kind, passionate about preservation and beauty. You ask questions instead of making assumptions. You see me as something more than a monster or a myth. Do you have any idea how rare that is? You see me too, Zara said, taking a step closer. Not just as a human, but as a person. You listen when I talk about my work, my grandmother, the things I care about. You make me feel like I matter. You do matter, Konstantin said, and suddenly he was right in front of her, close enough that she could feel the unnatural coolness of his body. You matter more than you should, more than is wise. I have lived for 500 years, Zara, and in all that time I have never met anyone quite like you. Zara's heart was racing now, thundering so hard she was certain he could hear it. What are you saying? I am saying that somewhere in the past month, between conversations in a rose garden and watching you breathe life back into dying flowers, I have developed feelings for you that go far beyond simple interest. Konstantin's voice was rough, raw with emotion. I am saying that the thought of those vampires harming you fills me with a rage I have not felt in centuries. I am saying that you have become important to me, dangerously so. Dangerous for who? Zara whispered. For both of us, Konstantin said. I am a vampire king, Zara. I have enemies, responsibilities, a position to maintain. And you are human, mortal, with a lifespan that is a heartbeat compared to mine. There is no future in this, whatever this is. Nothing but pain and loss waiting at the end. Then why tell me? Zara asked, though her hands were shaking. Because I am tired of secrets, Konstantin said. Because you deserve honesty, and because I suspect you feel it too, this impossible thing growing between us. Zara could not deny it. She had been trying not to examine her feelings too closely, but now forced to confront them, she could not escape the truth. She cared for Konstantin more than cared. In the space of a month, this beautiful, dangerous creature had worked his way into her heart, and she had no idea what to do about it. I do, she admitted. Feel it. I think about you constantly. I count the hours until midnight. When I read something interesting, my first thought is always that I want to tell you about it. And that terrifies me because you are right. There is no future in this. You are a vampire and I am human, and those are facts that cannot be changed. No, Konstantin agreed, they cannot. They stood there in the fading twilight, two beings caught between impossible desire and inevitable reality. Finally, Konstantin stepped back, putting careful distance between them. I should go, he said. Let you settle in. There are wards on all the windows and doors, and my number is programmed into the phone on the table. If you need anything at all, call immediately. Zara nodded, not trusting her voice. Konstantin moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at her. I will understand if you do not come to the garden tonight, he said quietly. If you need space to think, to process everything I have said, I will not be offended. But Zara knew, even as he said it, that she would be in the garden at midnight. Because despite the danger, despite the impossibility, she could not stay away from him. The rival vampires made their move 3 nights later. Zara was working late in the library archives, cataloging a new acquisition of medieval texts that had just arrived. She had fallen into a routine in her new apartment, spending her days working and her nights in the garden with Konstantin. They had not spoken again about the feelings they had acknowledged, dancing around the subject with careful conversation and deliberate distance. But the tension between them was palpable, thick enough to touch. She heard the door to the archives open and assumed it was Marcus, the night security guard who sometimes checked on her. But the footsteps were too light, too quick, and when Zara looked up, she found herself facing 3 strangers. They were vampires. She knew it instantly from their pale skin and otherworldly beauty, though their hair was dark rather than white. 2 men and a woman, all dressed in expensive modern clothing that somehow looked wrong on their timeless features. Zara Whitmore, the woman said, her accent vaguely European. How convenient to find you alone. Zara's hand went to her phone, but the woman was faster, crossing the space between them in a blur and plucking the device from Zara's grip. I do not think so. We would very much like to speak with you, and we cannot have you alerting Konstantin to our presence just yet. What do you want? Zara demanded, proud of how steady her voice sounded despite her racing heart. Information, one of the men said, moving to block the door, about Konstantin Draemir and his current activities. You have been spending a great deal of time with him, and we are curious about the nature of your relationship. I tend his roses, Zara said flatly. That's all. The woman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Darling, the Vampire King does not station guards around a building and implement military-grade security measures for a gardener. You are something more to him, and we want to know what. Zara lifted her chin, channeling her grandmother's stubborn courage. Even if I were something more, I would not tell you. The second man moved then, faster than Zara could track, and suddenly his hand was wrapped around her throat. Not squeezing, not yet, but the threat was clear. You should reconsider your loyalty. Konstantin Draemir is powerful, but he is not invincible. And humans are so very fragile. Terror spiked through Zara's system, sharp and overwhelming. But before the vampire could tighten his grip, the door to the archives exploded inward, and Konstantin was there. Zara had never seen him truly move before, not at full speed. He was a blur of white and fury, crossing the room in less than a heartbeat. The vampire holding Zara was suddenly on the far side of the room, embedded in the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. Konstantin stood in front of Zara, his body a wall between her and the other vampires, and the rage rolling off him was palpable. You dare, he said, and his voice was nothing human, nothing even remotely close to the cultured tones Zara had come to know. This was the voice of something ancient and deadly, a predator at the top of the food chain. You dare to touch what is mine? The woman raised her hands in a placating gesture, though her eyes were wary. Konstantin, we meant no permanent harm. We merely wished to speak with the girl. By threatening her? Konstantin snarled. By putting your hands on her throat? That is not speaking. That is an act of war. The vampire Konstantin had thrown into the wall extracted himself, looking shaken. We were only following orders. Lady Vivian wanted information, then Lady Vivian can come speak to me herself instead of sending her lackeys to terrorize humans under my protection, Konstantin said coldly. Get out, all of you, and tell your mistress that if she or any member of her house touches Zara Whitmore again, I will consider it a declaration of war between our houses. And trust me when I say that is not a war she will win. The 3 vampires exchanged glances, then the woman inclined her head slightly. We will deliver your message. They left with inhuman speed, and suddenly the archives were quiet except for Zara's ragged breathing. Konstantin stood motionless for a long moment, his back to her, and Zara could see the tension vibrating through every line of his body. Konstantin, she said softly. He turned, and the expression on his face made Zara's breath catch. Fear, rage, desperation, all warring for dominance. Did they hurt you? Tell me truthfully. I'm fine, Zara said, though her hands were shaking. Scared, but fine, you got here in time. I felt it, Konstantin said, moving toward her slowly, as though afraid he might frighten her. The wards I placed on you. They alerted me the moment those vampires entered your space with hostile intent. I came as quickly as I could, but I should have been faster. I should have anticipated they would be bold enough to enter the library itself. You saved me, Zara said. That's what matters. But Konstantin shook his head, and when he reached her, his hands came up to cup her face with infinite gentleness. This is my fault. They targeted you because of me, because of our connection. I have put you in danger simply by caring about you. Then what are you suggesting? Zara asked, though she was afraid she knew the answer. That we stop seeing each other? That I leave? I am suggesting that I have been selfish, Konstantin said, his thumbs brushing against her cheekbones. Keeping you close when I know the risks, indulging in these midnight conversations when I should have maintained distance. You deserve better than to be caught in the crossfire of vampire politics. Zara reached up, covering his cool hands with her warm ones. What if I don't want better? What if I want this, risks and all? No, listen to me, she said firmly. I'm not a child, Konstantin. I understand the danger. But I also understand that what we have, whatever this is, it matters. It matters to me. And I'm not willing to walk away from it just because it is complicated or scary. Konstantin closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were shining with something that might have been tears if vampires could cry. You are going to break my heart, Zara Whitmore. When time takes you from me, when mortality claims you as it claims all humans, you are going to destroy me. Then we will deal with that when it comes, Zara said. But right now, today, I am here. And I am choosing to be here with you for as long as we have. Konstantin made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and then he was kissing her. It was nothing like Zara had imagined kissing a vampire would be. His lips were cool but soft, and he kissed her with a gentleness that spoke of profound care, as though she were something precious and breakable. Zara melted into him, her hand sliding up to tangle in his white hair while his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, though Konstantin did not technically need to breathe, Zara found herself smiling. That was dangerous, she said. Catastrophically so, Konstantin agreed, but he was smiling too, and the joy on his face was worth every risk. The political situation with Lady Vivian's house escalated over the following weeks. Konstantin explained that Vivian led one of the old European vampire houses, one with ancient grudges against his own bloodline. She sought to expand her territory into his city, and she was using increasingly aggressive tactics to pressure him into conceding. She believes I have grown soft, Konstantin said one evening as they sat in Zara's apartment. He had taken to spending more time there, particularly after the incident in the archives, reluctant to let Zara out of his sight for long. That my long reign has made me complacent. She thinks she can push me until I either break or make a mistake. And will you? Zara asked, curled up next to him on the antique sofa. She had grown comfortable with his presence, with the cool solidity of his body and the way he would run his fingers through her hair while they talked. No, Konstantin said simply. I have not survived 500 years by being easily pushed. But I also cannot simply eliminate her without causing a larger conflict. There are rules among our kind, protocols that must be followed. If I kill her without proper justification, the other houses will unite against me. So what do you do? Zara asked. I play the game, Konstantin said. I gather allies, demonstrate strength, make it clear that the cost of challenging me is too high, and I protect what is mine. His hand tightened slightly in her hair on that last word, and Zara knew he meant her as much as his territory. The confrontation came on a cold October night, exactly 2 months after Zara and Konstantin had first met in the garden. Konstantin had called a formal gathering invoking ancient vampire law to summon the heads of all the major houses in North America. It was, he explained to Zara, a demonstration of power and a formal warning to Lady Vivian that her actions would not be tolerated. You should not attend, he told her the night before. These gatherings can be dangerous, particularly for humans. But Zara shook her head. If I'm part of the reason for this conflict, then I should be there. Besides, I'm not going to hide while you face your enemies alone, Konstantin argued. But Zara was stubborn, a trait her grandmother had always said would either save her or doom her. Eventually, he relented, though he insisted on measures to ensure her safety. The gathering was held in what Konstantin called the court below, a vast underground palace hidden beneath the city. Zara had not even known such a place existed, but as Konstantin led her through hidden passages and ancient doorways, she realized how little she truly knew about the vampire world. The main chamber was breathtaking, all soaring columns and vaulted ceilings, lit by what seemed like thousands of candles. Vampires filled the space, dozens of them, all pale and beautiful and utterly inhuman. They turned to watch as Konstantin entered with Zara at his side, and the weight of their attention was almost physical. Konstantin was different here, Zara realized. He moved with absolute authority, his shoulders back and his head high, every inch the king he claimed to be. He wore dark formal clothing that looked like it had been tailored for royalty, and there was something about his bearing that made even other vampires step aside as he passed. He seated Zara on a chair that had been placed on a raised dais at the front of the chamber, positioning himself standing beside her. The message was clear: she was under his direct protection, and anyone who wished to challenge that would have to go through him. Lady Vivian arrived fashionably late, making an entrance that was clearly calculated to draw attention. She was beautiful in the way all vampires were, with dark hair and crimson lips, dressed in a gown that probably cost more than Zara's entire education. "Konstantin," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "How dramatic of you to call a formal gathering. I hope we have not inconvenienced anyone with this little display." "The only inconvenience has been yours, Vivian," Konstantin replied, his voice cold and clear. "Your repeated incursions into my territory, your attacks on those under my protection, your blatant disregard for the laws that govern our kind." Vivian's smile was sharp. "I merely sought to remind you that territory is not permanent, that strength must be constantly demonstrated. And I confess I was curious about your new pet." Her eyes slid to Zara, and there was something predatory in that gaze that made Zara's skin crawl. "She is not a pet," Konstantin said, and there was warning in every syllable. "She is under my protection, bound to me by laws older than your house. Any harm that comes to her will be answered in blood." Murmurs ran through the assembled vampires. Zara did not fully understand the significance of Konstantin's words, but it was clear the other vampires did. "You would claim her formally?" Vivian asked, and now there was genuine surprise in her voice. "A human? How wonderfully sentimental of you." "I claim her," Konstantin said firmly. "Before all assembled witnesses, I declare Zara Whitmore to be under the protection of my house and my person. She is mine, and I am hers, bound by choice and by right. Let any who would challenge this speak now." Silence fell over the chamber. Zara's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She had no idea what Konstantin had just done, but it felt momentous, irrevocable. Vivienne's expression had gone calculating. And if she were to meet with an unfortunate accident? Humans are so fragile after all. They die of natural causes all the time. "If she dies, Vivienne, no matter the cause, I will hold you responsible," Konstantin said softly, dangerously. "And I will spend the next century hunting down every member of your bloodline until nothing remains but memory and ash. Do you understand me?" The threat hung in the air, absolute and terrible. Vivian stared at Konstantin for a long moment, and Zara saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. Finally, she inclined her head. "Very well, I acknowledge your claim and will respect it as the laws demand." "See that you do," Konstantin said. Then, louder, addressing the entire assembly, "Let it be known that Zara Whitmore is under my protection. Any who harm her, threaten her, or act against her in any way will answer to me personally. This is my decree as king of the North American bloodlines, and it is law." The vampires bowed, a wave of acknowledgement that swept through the chamber. And just like that, it was done. Later, back in Zara's apartment, Konstantin paced restlessly while Zara tried to process everything that had happened. "You bound yourself to me," she said finally. "In front of all those vampires, you claimed me as yours." "I did," Konstantin confirmed. "It is the only way to truly protect you under our laws. As long as you are formally under my protection, harming you would be an act of war against my entire house. Even Vivian is not bold enough to risk that." "But what does it mean?" Zara asked. "This binding, this claim?" Konstantin stopped pacing and turned to face her. "It means that in the eyes of vampire society, you are mine, my responsibility, my territory, my beloved." The last word was spoken softly, almost hesitantly, and Zara felt her breath catch. "Beloved," she repeated. "I did not ask your permission," Konstantin said, and for the first time he sounded uncertain. "I simply declared it because it was the only way I could ensure your safety. If you are angry, if you feel I have overstepped." Zara crossed the room and took his hands in hers, silencing him with a kiss. "I'm not angry," she said when they broke apart. "I'm terrified and confused and completely out of my depth, but I'm not angry. Because you are right. You are my beloved. I love you, Konstantin Draemir, which is probably the most foolish thing I have ever admitted, but it is true nonetheless." Konstantin's expression transformed, wonder and joy and desperate hope all fighting for dominance. "You love me?" "Hopelessly," Zara confirmed. "Completely. Even though you are a vampire king and I am a human archivist, even though we make no logical sense whatsoever, I love you." Konstantin kissed her then, deep and thorough, and when he pulled back his eyes were shining. "I have loved you since the night I found you tending my roses," he said. "Since you looked at me with fear and courage in equal measure and decided to stay anyway. You have given me something I thought lost forever, Zara. You have given me hope." They spent that night wrapped in each other's arms, talking and kissing and simply being together. Zara knew there were still complications to face, still questions about the future that had no easy answers. But for now, in this moment, she was content. The weeks that followed were peaceful in a way that felt almost surreal. With Vivienne's formal acknowledgement of Konstantin's claim, the harassment stopped. Zara continued her work at the library, though now she did so with the knowledge that she was probably the most protected archivist in human history, and her nights were spent with Konstantin, in the garden or her apartment, or exploring the hidden spaces of his world that he was slowly revealing to her. He taught her about vampire society, the intricate politics and ancient traditions. He showed her the underground courts and introduced her to members of his house who were loyal and trustworthy. And gradually, Zara began to understand the weight of what Konstantin carried as king, the constant balancing act between maintaining peace and projecting strength. "You are good at this," she told him one evening as they walked through the court below. "Leading, protecting your people. I have had a great deal of practice," Konstantin replied, "but it is easier now, knowing I have something to return to at the end of the night. You have given me a reason to care about the future, Zara, in a way I had not for a very long time." But happiness, Zara was learning, was often fleeting. The attack came on a Wednesday night in late November. Zara had been working late, cataloging a new collection of Renaissance texts that had been donated to the library. Konstantin was at a meeting with leaders from other vampire houses, something about territorial disputes in the Western territories that required his attention. Zara had just finished for the evening and was preparing to head upstairs to her apartment when the lights went out. She froze, her heart beginning to race. The library had backup generators. The lights should not simply fail. And in the sudden darkness she heard movement, footsteps that were too quiet to be human. "Hello, little human," a voice said from the shadows, and Zara recognized it as belonging to one of the vampires who had threatened her in the archives months ago. "Did you truly think the king's protection would last forever?" Zara's hand went to her phone, but it was knocked from her grip before she could activate it. Rough hands seized her arms, and she was lifted off her feet with inhuman strength. "Vivienne sends her regards," the vampire hissed in her ear. "She wanted you to know that your precious Konstantin cannot protect you from everything. Some accidents are simply too believable to question." Terror flooded Zara's system, but beneath it was a core of stubborn rage. She had not survived 26 years, had not lost her grandmother and rebuilt her life, had not found love with an impossible vampire king just to be killed by some lackey in a dark library. She drove her elbow back as hard as she could, connecting with the vampire's ribs. It was like hitting stone, and pain shot through her arm, but the vampire's grip loosened slightly in surprise. Zara wrenched herself free and ran, not toward the stairs but toward the archives, toward the oldest section of the library where Konstantin had once told her the strongest wards were placed. The vampire pursued, faster than Zara could ever hope to be, but she had a head start and desperation lending her speed. She burst through the archive doors and slammed them shut behind her, throwing the ancient iron bolt that Konstantin had insisted be installed. "That will not stop me for long," the vampire called from the other side. "Iron means nothing to my kind, little human. It is just another myth." Zara did not waste time responding. She pulled out the emergency beacon Konstantin had given her, a small device he had made her promise to carry at all times. She pressed the button, praying he would receive the signal, praying he could get here in time. The archive door splintered, wood cracking under inhuman strength. Zara backed away, looking frantically for anything she could use as a weapon. Her hand closed on a heavy iron bookend shaped like a rose, part of the decorations Konstantin had placed in the archives. It would do nothing against a vampire's strength, but it was better than facing her attacker empty-handed. The vampire entered through the ruined door, his expression amused. "You have spirit, I will grant you that. It is a shame Vivienne wants you dead. You might have made an interesting vampire. Konstantin will kill you for this," Zara said, keeping the bookend hidden behind her back. "You know that, don't you? Whatever Vivienne promised you, it will not be worth what he does to you when he finds out." "If he finds out," the vampire corrected. "Vivienne has been very careful. This will look like a simple break-in gone wrong, a human tragedy that even the great Konstantin Draemir cannot prevent." He lunged, and Zara swung the bookend with all her strength. It connected with the side of his head with a satisfying crack, not enough to seriously injure but enough to stagger him. Zara used those precious seconds to run again, deeper into the archives, toward the oldest section where manuscripts from medieval times were kept in climate-controlled cases. She had just reached the medieval section when the world exploded into motion. Konstantin appeared as if materializing from shadow itself, placing himself between Zara and her attacker with a snarl that was purely animalistic. "You dare," he said, and his voice was the same ancient, terrible thing it had been when he confronted the vampires who first threatened Zara. "You dare to break my laws, violate my territory, harm what is mine?" The attacking vampire stumbled backward, fear finally entering his eyes. Lord Draemir, I was only following orders. Orders from whom? Konstantin demanded, advancing on the vampire with predatory grace. Speak quickly and I may allow you to live long enough to stand trial. Lady Vivian, the vampire gasped. She said the human had made you weak, that removing her would restore your strength. She said it would be for the good of all our kind. Vivienne has made a grave error, Konstantin said softly. One that will cost her everything. He moved then, faster than Zara could track, and suddenly the attacking vampire was on the ground, Konstantin's hand wrapped around his throat. You will deliver a message to your mistress. Tell her that she has broken the laws she claimed to respect, that she has violated the protection I declared before all witnesses. Tell her that I am coming for her, and that when I am done, her house will be nothing but ash and memory. He released the vampire, who scrambled away and fled with inhuman speed. Konstantin stood motionless for a moment, clearly struggling for control, then turned to Zara. Are you hurt? He asked, and despite the rage still vibrating through him, his hands were gentle as they reached for her. I'm okay, Zara said, though she was shaking. Scared, but okay. The beacon worked. Thank the gods, Konstantin breathed, pulling her into his arms. When I felt it activate, when I realized you were in danger, I have never moved so fast in my entire existence. If I had been even seconds later, but you weren't, Zara said, holding him tightly. You got here in time, you saved me. Konstantin pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands. This cannot continue. Vivian has shown she will not honor our laws, will not respect even formal declarations. She will keep trying to hurt you, to use you against me. And eventually I may not arrive in time, so what do we do? Zara asked. I end this, Konstantin said grimly, permanently. The war between Konstantin's house and Vivienne's was swift and brutal. Within 3 days of the attack on Zara, Konstantin had gathered his allies and launched a formal challenge against Vivienne, invoking the oldest vampire laws to demand satisfaction for her violations. Zara watched from a secured location as vampires who had lived for centuries prepared for battle with a efficiency that spoke of long practice. Konstantin had tried to keep her away from the planning, but Zara had insisted on being present, on understanding what was happening and why. Vampire law is built on strength and honor, Konstantin explained as they reviewed strategy in a war room deep in the court below. Vivienne violated both when she ordered the attack on you after formally acknowledging my protection. That gives me the right to challenge her directly for leadership of her house. You mean kill her, Zara said quietly. Konstantin did not flinch from the blunt statement. Yes. In our world, some conflicts can only be resolved through death. It is brutal, perhaps, but it is honest. And it prevents the kind of endless feuding that once plagued our kind. The challenge itself was to be held in a neutral location, witnessed by representatives from all the major houses. It would be, Konstantin explained, a formal duel governed by ancient rules. No weapons beyond natural vampire abilities. No interference from outside parties, and the fight would continue until one combatant was dead or yielded. Vivienne will not yield, Konstantin said with certainty. She is too proud, too convinced of her own superiority. This will end in death. And if you lose, Zara asked, voicing her deepest fear. Konstantin turned to her, his expression softening. I will not lose. I have been a warrior for 500 years, Zara. I have survived countless challenges, endless conflicts, and now I have something to fight for beyond simple survival. I have you to return to, and that makes me more dangerous than Vivienne can imagine. The night of the challenge, Zara stood in a viewing gallery above the combat arena, surrounded by guards Konstantin had personally selected. Below, in a circular space marked with ancient symbols, Konstantin and Vivienne faced each other. Vivienne was smiling, confident and cruel. You have grown soft, Draemir, falling in love with a human of all things. It is pathetic. You mistake love for weakness, Konstantin replied calmly. It is an error that will cost you your life. The signal was given, and they moved. Zara had never seen vampires truly fight before. It was nothing like the movies, nothing like the books. They were blurs of motion, moving faster than human eyes could properly track, striking with force that cracked the stone floor. The sound of their combat was thunderous, echoing through the chamber. Konstantin was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. He moved with centuries of experience, anticipating Vivienne's attacks and countering with devastating precision. But Vivienne was no novice either, and she fought with the desperate ferocity of someone who knew defeat meant death. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Zara watched with her heart in her throat, flinching every time one of them landed a blow, relaxing slightly when Konstantin would recover and counter. Finally, Konstantin found an opening. He moved with blinding speed, getting inside Vivienne's guard, and his hand closed around her throat. With a single brutal motion, he snapped her neck and tore her head from her body. It was over. Silence fell over the arena as Vivienne's body crumbled to ash, the way vampires did in true death. Konstantin stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard despite not needing to breathe, covered in blood and dust, and looked up at Zara, The love and relief in his eyes was overwhelming. The aftermath of Vivienne's death was complicated politically, but Konstantin navigated it with the skill of someone who had been playing these games for centuries. Vivienne's house was absorbed into his own, her followers either swearing loyalty or leaving to join other houses. And most importantly, the threat to Zara was ended. "It is truly over," Konstantin told her a week later as they sat in the rose garden where everything had begun. "Vivienne is dead, her allies scattered or pacified. You are safe now, truly safe." "And what does that mean for us?" Zara asked softly. "Now that the crisis has passed, now that you don't need to protect me every moment." Konstantin reached for her hand, threading his cool fingers through her warm ones. "It means we have time. Time to be together without constantly looking over our shoulders. Time to build something real between us, if that is what you want." "You know what I want," Zara said. "I want you. For as long as we have, however we can make it work." "About that," Konstantin said, and something in his tone made Zara look at him sharply. "There is something I need to tell you. Something I have been reluctant to mention because I did not want to pressure you, but I think you deserve to know all your options." "What are you talking about?" Zara asked. Konstantin took a deep breath, unnecessary but habitual. "You could become like me, a vampire. It is possible, though the transformation is difficult and dangerous. But if you chose it, if you truly wanted it, we could have not just years together but centuries, eternity." Zara's heart stuttered. "You're offering to turn me?" "I am offering you the choice," Konstantin corrected gently. "I would never force this on you, never pressure you into a decision so profound. But I love you, Zara Whitmore, and the thought of losing you to time breaks my heart. If there is a way for us to stay together, I want you to know about it." Zara sat in silence for a long moment, processing this revelation. Becoming a vampire, leaving behind her humanity, her mortality, everything that made her what she was, but gaining centuries with the man she loved, time to explore and learn and be together.
"I need to think about it,"
she said finally. "This is not a decision I can make lightly." "Of course," Konstantin said immediately. "Take all the time you need. I will love you regardless of what you choose, for as long as we have together." Zara spent the next several weeks in deep contemplation. She researched vampire transformation, speaking with members of Konstantin's house who had been turned, learning about the process and what it entailed. She made lists of pros and cons, thought about what she would gain and what she would lose. But in the end, the decision came down to something simpler than logic or reason. She loved Konstantin, loved him with an intensity that frightened and thrilled her in equal measure. And the thought of leaving him, of living out her mortal span and dying while he continued on for centuries without her, was unbearable. "I want to do it," she told him one evening in early December as the first snow of the season fell outside her apartment windows. "I want to become like you." Konstantin had frozen at her words, hope and fear warring on his face. "Are you certain? Once it is done, it cannot be undone. You would be vampire forever with all that entails." "I'm certain," Zara said. "I have thought about nothing else for weeks, and I know this is what I want. A life with you for as long as we both shall live, which in our case might be a very long time indeed." Konstantin pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You have made me happier than I thought possible," he whispered against her hair. "I will spend eternity trying to be worthy of this gift you are giving me." The transformation was scheduled for the winter solstice, a date that held significance in vampire tradition. Konstantin explained that Zara would need to be in perfect health, mentally and physically prepared for what was to come. The process itself would take 3 days, during which Konstantin would need to drain most of her blood and then share his own, triggering the change that would remake her on a cellular level. "It will be painful," he warned her, "perhaps the most painful thing you have ever experienced. Your body will be dying and remaking itself simultaneously." "Some humans do not survive the transformation, but most do," Zara asked. "Most do," Konstantin confirmed, "particularly when the vampire performing the transformation is as old and powerful as I am. My blood is strong, and it will help you through the process. But I need you to understand the risks." "I understand," Zara said, "and I accept them." The night of the solstice arrived cold and clear. Konstantin had prepared a room deep in the court below, a space that had been used for transformations for centuries. It was beautiful in a stark way, all stone and candlelight, with a bed in the center draped in dark silk. Zara entered the room wearing a simple white dress, feeling like a bride going to her wedding, in a way she supposed she was. This was a commitment as profound as any marriage, a choice to bind herself to Konstantin for the rest of existence. "Are you ready?" Konstantin asked softly, taking her hands in his. "I'm terrified," Zara admitted, "but yes, I'm ready." Konstantin led her to the bed, helping her settle against the pillows. "I will be with you the entire time," he promised. "Through every moment, every second of pain. You will not be alone, Zara, I swear it." Then he leaned down and kissed her, deep and thorough, a kiss that tasted of forever and promises. When he pulled back, his eyes had changed, the pupils blown wide and dark with hunger. I love you, he said. Remember that through everything that comes next. I love you and I will keep you safe. Then his fangs descended, and he bit. The first sensation was cold, spreading from the puncture wounds in her neck through her entire body. Zara gasped, her hands clutching at Konstantin's shoulders, but he held her steady, his arms strong and sure around her. I have you, he murmured between pulls at her throat. I have you, beloved. Just hold on. Zara felt her strength fading, her heartbeat slowing as Konstantin drank. The world began to gray at the edges, consciousness slipping away like water through her fingers. Just when she thought she might disappear entirely, Konstantin pulled back and bit into his own wrist. Drink, he commanded, pressing the wound to her lips. Drink, Zara. She drank, and his blood was like liquid fire burning through her fading system. It tasted of copper and power and something wild and ancient. Zara drank until Konstantin gently pulled his wrist away, and then the world exploded into pain. It was agony beyond anything Zara had ever imagined. Every cell in her body felt like it was being torn apart and rebuilt, her bones breaking and reforming, her organs shutting down and restarting. She screamed, or thought she did, though no sound seemed to escape her throat. Through it all, Konstantin held her. He wrapped his body around hers, murmuring words of comfort and love, his cool hands stroking her hair and face. When she thrashed, he held her steady. When she wept, he caught her tears, and when she was certain she could not endure another moment, he reminded her of all the reasons she was fighting. You are strong, he told her over and over. Stronger than you know. You will survive this, Zara. We will have our eternity. Just hold on. The pain lasted for 3 days, just as Konstantin had warned. 3 days of dying and being reborn, of her human body giving way to something new and different. But finally, on the dawn of the 4th day, the pain began to recede. Zara opened her eyes to find the world transformed. Colors were more vivid, sounds more clear. She could hear Konstantin's unnecessary breathing, the rustle of fabric, the distant drip of water somewhere in the court below. And when she looked at Konstantin, she saw him with new clarity, every detail of his beloved face sharp and perfect. Welcome back, he said softly, his hand cupping her cheek. How do you feel? Zara considered the question. Her body felt different, stronger, almost humming with power. Her throat ached with a thirst she had never experienced before, a hunger that demanded satisfaction. But beneath all of that was a profound sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was meant to be. Different, she said, and was startled by the quality of her own voice, richer and deeper than before. But good, is it done? Am I vampire now? You are, Konstantin confirmed, and his smile was radiant. Your transformation is complete, Zara. You are vampire and you are mine, and we have all the time in the world. He helped her sit up, supporting her as she adjusted to her new strength and senses. When she caught sight of herself in a mirror across the room, Zara gasped. Her skin had paled to porcelain, and her dark hair now had threads of white running through it, marks of her transformation. Her eyes, when she looked closely, had taken on a faint luminescence, catching the candlelight like a cat's. She looked like herself, but also like something more, something other. She looked like a vampire queen. You are beautiful, Konstantin said, coming to stand behind her in the mirror. Together they made a striking pair, pale and powerful and utterly inhuman. How does it feel to see yourself this way? Strange, Zara admitted, but not wrong. I think I like it. Good, Konstantin said, pressing a kiss to her temple. Because you will be looking at that face for a very long time. The next weeks were spent learning to navigate her new existence. Konstantin taught her to control her enhanced strength, to move with the inhuman speed that now came naturally, to manage the thirst that would be her constant companion. He introduced her to the vampire community as his consort, and Zara found herself learning an entirely new social structure, ancient protocols, and complicated politics. But through it all, they had each other. Nights spent in the rose garden that had brought them together. Days learning about the vampire world and Zara's place in it. Moments of quiet joy and fierce passion, building a life that was strange and wonderful in equal measure. Do you regret it? Konstantin asked one evening as they sat in the garden, watching the moon rise over the city. Giving up your humanity? Zara considered the question honestly. She had lost things in the transformation, certainly. The ability to walk in sunlight, to eat human food, to age and change in the ways humans did. She would never have children, never grow old with friends from her mortal life, never experience 1,000 small human joys. But she had gained so much more: strength, power, time beyond measure, the ability to truly understand Konstantin's world and be his equal in it, and most importantly, she had gained forever with the man she loved. No, she said finally, leaning against his shoulder. I don't regret it. This is where I belong, Konstantin. With you in this life we are building together. Konstantin wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. I love you, Zara Whitmore, my beloved, my consort, my queen. I will love you until the stars burn out and time itself ends. And I love you. Zara replied, my king, my savior, my heart, for all eternity. They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them, two immortal beings bound together by choice and love. The roses climbed the garden walls, their white blooms glowing in the moonlight, a testament to beauty preserved and cared for. And in the distance, the city lights sparkled like earthbound stars, a reminder of the human world Zara had left behind and the vampire world she had embraced. She belonged to both now and to neither, but most importantly, she belonged with Konstantin. The months turned to years, and Zara grew into her new existence with grace and determination. She continued her work as an archivist, though now she had access to vampire records that went back centuries, documents that revealed the true history of the world. She learned to fight, to defend herself and those she cared about, becoming a force to be reckoned with in vampire politics. And she and Konstantin built a life together that was rich and full. They traveled, visiting places Konstantin had known in his long life, and showing Zara wonders she had only read about. They expanded the rose garden, adding new varieties and rare specimens. They hosted gatherings in the court below, entertaining vampire nobility and cementing alliances. But their favorite times were still the quiet nights in the garden, just the two of them among the roses, talking and laughing and simply being together. Those moments reminded them of how they had begun, a human woman and a vampire king finding unexpected connection in a place of beauty. On their 5th anniversary as vampires together, Konstantin brought Zara back to the exact spot where they had first met. The garden had flourished under their joint care, the roses more spectacular than ever, and the night was clear and bright with stars. "Do you remember the first time I saw you here?" Konstantin asked, pulling Zara into his arms. "You were tending my roses at midnight, looking like you belonged among them." "I remember being terrified," Zara said with a laugh. "You appeared out of nowhere, this impossibly beautiful creature, and I was certain I was about to die, and instead you lived," Konstantin said. "More than lived, you became something extraordinary, Zara. You became my partner, my equal, my love. You became everything I did not know I was missing." Zara reached up to cup his face, marveling as she always did at his beauty, at the love shining in his ancient eyes. "You gave me forever, Konstantin. You gave me purpose and passion and a love beyond anything I imagined possible. How could I be anything but grateful?" "Then we are both fortunate," Konstantin said, leaning down to capture her lips in a kiss that was tender and fierce in equal measure. When they broke apart, both smiling, Zara said, "Tell me something. That first night when you found me in the garden, did you have any idea where it would lead?" Konstantin laughed, the sound rich and joyful. "Not even slightly. I thought perhaps we would speak a few times, that you would be a brief distraction from the tedium of immortality. But then you looked at me like I was a person instead of a monster, and you stayed when you should have run, and you cared for my roses like they mattered. How could I not fall in love with you?" "I still care for your roses," Zara pointed out, gesturing to the immaculate garden around them. "Our roses," Konstantin corrected gently. "Everything I have is yours, Zara. My home, my kingdom, my heart. All of it for all eternity." "Eternity," Zara repeated, testing the weight of the word. It had seemed so impossible once, so far beyond human comprehension. But now, standing in the garden with Konstantin's arms around her and centuries stretching ahead of them, it seemed perfect. "Eternity," Konstantin confirmed. "You and me, beloved, for as long as time exists." And as they stood among the white roses that had brought them together, two immortal beings bound by love and choice, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right decision. She had found her place, her purpose, her home. She had found forever. The rose garden continued to bloom season after season, tended by two vampires who had learned that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from unexpected meetings and impossible choices. And in the court below, in the hidden world beneath the city, stories were told of the vampire king and his archivist queen, whose love had transformed them both and created something rare and precious in the darkness. A love that would last forever, tended carefully like the roses in their garden, growing stronger and more beautiful with each passing year.